Hey, what's good everybody? My name is Alckemy. Welcome to the channel. Today you and I are going to be doing some exploration with vocoders. It's nothing new, this technology has been around for a while, but I figured that it could be fun to show you some cool spins of things that I'm doing as of recent, and also some stuff that we could take advantage of with the new Serum 2's vocoder, just because I haven't really seen a whole lot of content on it. It's kind of finicky, and that's going to be towards the latter of the video, so if you just want to skip ahead, you can do that. But yeah, we do all things sound design here. We're going to be getting into some weird exploration and all that, and hopefully you're in for the ride. Let's go ahead and get started. The first thing that we need in here is some kind of vocal. We could do it myself, where I could record something, or I could just find something ridiculous in here and try to record that in. So I don't know, something like this could be cool. I do actually like that, but let's get some actual words in here.
A juicy red apple is nice, but not every apple is red.
Okay, sure. Shout out to me having the worst vocal sample pack ever. I don't know why, but the stuff that I've downloaded is just absolute trash, and it's gold for content, but it's terrible for making music. So something that I've been kind of on about lately is trying to make sounds that just don't necessarily sound like they came straight from a synthesizer. Especially with my genre, especially with the kind of music that I've been writing lately. I've been wanting to try to reintroduce something that brings a little bit more of a sense of familiarity through expressing or having some kind of vocal tonality. If you've watched my tutorials, you know that I've done this through, EQs with Neurobass and all that other stuff, and I've gone into way too many explanations and over explanations of why I love that stuff. But this time it's going to be a little bit more clinical in a sense of maybe creating other musical instruments through this while still getting something that still sounds like it could have come from a person or a humanoid, or I don't know. What can you say? So the first part of this is going to be pretty typical, but I do want to talk about some options that might be exclusive to your DAW, primarily with either Ableton or Bitwig. I am eating a chip. Sorry. It just looked too enticing. So the first thing I'm going to do is kind of just go this classical route. And what we want to do is just make a super saw, which is not going to be anything crazy, but let's just go 7 voices, something like this. And we're just going to start here. The thing about this is that whenever you're implementing this, it doesn't need to be super insane because it's going to be going through a vocoder anyways. And so you kind of want to think about how you're going to, you can only get so much detail through whatever the carrier or the modulator is in the first place. So I find that something that is rich in harmonics that doesn't have a ton of movement will probably work best for this, but explore. Throw your neurobasses on here, which I have videos on, throw a vocal onto a vocal. You know what I mean? Get really creative with it. So we have the super saw. I'm going to go mute because that's all we really need. And then as opposed to just letting this talk out, I want this to be something that's more reminiscent of a pad. So I'm going to stretch it out. And then I'm going to set this to repitch. Repitch will kind of preserve the audio by lowering the pitch the more that you stretch the file out, so that way it's not going to sound super grainy. So if we take a listen to this. Yeah, it sounds like somebody is like throwing a punch in slow motion or something. That being said, you don't have to do it this way. I just find that it will work really well because what I'm looking for is not necessarily something that is acute and something that's very easy to discern, but more so the speaking and the vowel movement that we have on this particular file in the first place. So let's go ahead and add our vocoder. And mine is a little bit different than most others because I kind of have a selector here. For some reason, I have this as a selector, but unless if I turn the brown noise, or unless if I turn the brown noise off, it's not going to work. So we're just going to tell this to go to faceplant, and then we're going to go to pre. That just means pre-effects. The reason why is because, pre-fader, I think. The reason why is because if I mute this, it's still going to play. If I don't mute it, if I put post, then whenever I hit mute, it's like not going to have any sound. So working with this, go ahead and turn this up all the way to 400 and use a softer bandpass curve. And then let's just go ahead and listen to it. So you can already kind of hear, right? It's already kind of getting there. Turn the release just a little bit. Play with the format maybe. And this is really all we need in order to get something that's interesting. So from here, maybe I could use like Big Sky, which I wouldn't recommend buying, by the way, unless if you're just a masochist and have free money. Somebody got this for me, but I would be lying if I didn't say that this is an incredible, it's not an incredible reverb. It is by far my favorite, but it's so expensive. I wouldn't have purchased that on my own. We can use something like Fuse Compressor to bring this up just a little bit. And then what we're really trying to do is just get something that's reminiscent of a pad that, you know, kind of sounds like it's infused with a human voice. So the Big Sky is kind of just enhancing that and kind of making it sound like a choir almost. So I'm going to send this into some clipping. And it's kind of the thing that I wanted to mention before as well is that, you know, this on its own, the saw wave, right, is full and rich of harmonics, and whatever you send through a vocoder, there's going to be some kind of degradation. So the infusion aspect of it needs to be kind of treated as, I would say even treated as an offspring of physical modeling. I know what I just said, so hold on a second. Unbutton your muscle shirt. Chill out. The thing is that the vocoder can do a really good job of recreating white noise, and because of that, if you treat it as this being, I would say, the resonator of a physical instrument, not necessarily the exciter, although you can actually make it sound like a hi-hat or a stick hit or something, but more so of a resonator, then you can shape that physically with comb filters, with, I don't know, even disperser or convolution reverb or something of the sort, right? Which is kind of what we're doing here. If I were to say, I think that chorale is honestly just a impulse response that is reminiscent of these different choir things. In fact, if I were to take a choir maybe with convolution reverb, we might even get something very similar. Oops, choir. So maybe let's just even take a piece of that, kind of like this, and fold this through. And let's take a listen to how this sounds. So as you can hear, it's a little bit more resonant, but this kind of proves the point of kind of what I'm talking about. If you kind of think about this as being the air in between your instrument, then you can kind of model this to become lots of different things that could be pretty interesting. But because we also have the voice that's over this, it's almost like creating a physically modeled instrument, or it could be watery or something too if you prefer. But it also kind of alludes into something that still has a little bit of organic tonality to it, which I really like. You can also throw chords on here, which it will translate pretty well. So if I were to kind of grab one of these guys, kind of like so, you will be able to hear the chord. And if you've made anything like color based, then you're probably already knowing what I'm talking about. So take a listen. Which is cool, but the problem with this is that it doesn't really translate well if you're wanting to create a playable instrument in another thing, unless if you're going for like jungle or something. But what we can do is go back and start here and go into a granular sampler or regular sampler. Doesn't really matter. I'm going to keep it here just to maybe have something like this with a long density, and then we're going to record this out. So let's go ahead and grab that. We'll just grab the whole thing here. Open up Faceplant. Unfortunately, to import this, we need to go to our file section, but now we can just toss this in here. And if you recall, I recorded this in C, so it should already be tuned, which you can record it at whatever you want, but I just find that recording things at C make it easier for, I don't know, usability purposes. But Now what we can do is unsolo this and solo that. And you can hear that we've kind of got this interesting instrument now. And if I can make this a little bit longer. Oh yeah. Give me one sec. Adding some convolution reverb here. So the cool thing about this is obviously it's still a saw wave, but it still has the talking and the motion in it that makes it seem like it's a hybrid of people that are speaking or something of the sort that, you know, yeah, you get the point. Now, the reason why I wanted to show you this first is because the next segment that I'm going to show you is actually going to create something very different. And that's the beauty of having different tools. I know that for the past month or two, I've been kind of talking about this versus this or whatever, but now I want to talk about Serum 2 because there's a lot of cool stuff that you can do that's going to lead to different results, especially because we have access to other things like a spectral engine. This is already kind of set up as a saw wave, so I can do this and just turn this off. And we can go into the spectral here and just grab the same thing.
A juicy red apple is nice, but not every apple is red.
God, that's fucking terrible. Okay. So what I've realized with the spectral is that it has a vocoder option, but it doesn't behave the same. And also, if you throw a conventional sound in here, like let's say something that comes from an oscillator, it doesn't usually work as well as it does with a straight up vocal. I don't know why. Maybe it's just because of what makes up the human voice, say within the, what is this, spectrogram or whatever, through these mids here. There needs to be this kind of presence in this area for this to work as effectively as we want it to. But what we want to do is just turn this down all the way. Sorry, that was really inaccurate. We want to turn this down all the way. And then we can reintroduce this as a vocal. And now let's just go ahead and play this before we actually, introduce the vocoder. I also need to unsolo this. Now, if you notice here, this is also extremely quiet. And depending on what you throw through here, it's going to be different, but maybe we can try to normalize this and push this up.
Juicy red apple is nice, but not every apple is red. Juicy red apple is nice, but not every apple is red.
So what I just realized is that at 0 on this, it does nothing. So we need to introduce a little bit. So with this, it's a completely different work environment because what we can do is change the scan of this while it works. And we can also give this a little bit of tail. We can also set this to some kind of forward and backward loop if we want to. But the goal of this is to kind of slow it down enough to kind of get a similar vibe to where we're going to create a pad out of this. And whenever I play a chord, it's going to work. But you can see that the timbre and the it's a spectral synth, so it's going to sound different, but it still sounds pretty cool. Yeah, and interestingly, you can hear that whenever we play this, it's still going to give like just weird sounds, but it sounds completely different than what I've done from before. And part of that is because this is trying to follow the vocal, and you can hear that during certain vowels of this, their resonances are kind of peeking through and kind of creating this borderline, nails on a chalkboard sound, and sometimes it sounds cool. And that's honestly why the filter exists, because you can correct that, so you can listen to it if you wanted to. You can see right here that we have some crazy resonances going on, and what we could probably do is create some dips here. Something kind of like so, just in these general areas to try to tame it. The other thing that I would recommend, even beyond this, is to turn this way down and to just like go ham and create like a comb out of the spectral filter and just see what you can get. But if we play this,
Juicy red apple is nice, but
You see how we've actually corrected this, and now it kind of sounds like a little bit different. But if like we do the opposite, like I said, this is really important. Turn this down because we're going to get really crazy stuff out of this. You can kind of just explore really and re-synthesize, I guess, through spectral means or whatever into interesting sounds that you normally wouldn't get out of typical vocoder processing. God, that's a mouthful. Something I'm going to do is pull off of the distortion here just a bit. Then maybe I can turn this up a little bit. And then I want to add some reverb. And this will hopefully give us some space to work with and back up. No, I'm just kidding. But, you know, just some width and some etherealness that we can utilize. So you can kind of hear it. It's almost there. And perhaps this is cutting a little bit too much out of it. So maybe we can move the mix a bit. What I'm trying to do with this, more so of this sounding like a dungeon, which you absolutely can do, I'm more concerned with trying to make this still be harmonic, or still be, what is it, still have harmony in it, still have some kind of identifiable pitch, still be tonal. And so if for whatever reason you're working with this, you can always reintroduce just a little bit of the level as well to help blend it. Unfortunately, you kind of lose some of that, and it doesn't really, you know what I mean, always line up. So maybe there's something to be said about having some kind of filter over this or whatever, but that's kind of the interplay that I'm still figuring out whenever I'm working with these different things to try to, you know, figure out how to make the most out of this. One cool thing that you can also do in regards to filtering, in case you didn't know, is that you can actually filter this just like this, to where this would be the low end, this would be the high end, and you can kind of cut whatever it is out. But as a means of getting something that, you know, we at least got half of it rather, because while this doesn't necessarily sound yet like, you know, whatever pitch I'm playing, there's a lot of play that you can utilize in which to provide texture for something, or to, you know, try to find a middle ground. I'm going to see if maybe I can back off of the level here, but introduce more of this and hope that I can actually get something that sounds like a saw wave is being infused into whatever vocal this is. Yeah, it's weird. Like when you play chords with it, you can kind of hear it a little bit better, but it is kind of interesting. Now, one cool thing about this, though, is that if you do hear something that's tonal, like even though it's not the whole entire thing, you can resample that out and then put it back in. So maybe we can even kind of show you a glimpse of that just by doing something kind of like that, or maybe even an octave up. And then what we can do is resample this back into itself. And now we can see what that's going to sound like. So that's a little bit closer now, yeah? Wow, that's pretty cool. So we can make this a little bit bigger and then maybe adjust the output just a bit as well. you can definitely hear the tonality of this now. What does this sound like on its own? Maybe just a little bit, rather. Actually, let's go to off. Yeah, and this almost sounds like something that now is a mix between, you know, that choir, or the vocal rather, and then the saw wave. But it's super ghostly. And it's also like kind of off in some cases as well. But again, this is kind of what I was talking about from before, because, you know, if you take this into almost, sorry, Chip, Lorne territory, where you apply some reverb, this might sound terrible, by the way, so I don't know, I'm just exploring. But if I were to add some reverb, and then add some filter and distortion, and then maybe some OTT or something, let's just set up some safety measures first, and then we can toss this into an over. Cool, cool. And turn the makeup up. Chevy Chev usually messes stuff up in a really pleasing way, so that's usually my go-to when I first start trying this stuff. And then we're gonna kind of triple this up now. But do you hear how... Yeah, I mean, it sounds like monks or something, you know, that are kind of singing this out, and you can get some just insane textures from this. Now, one final trick that I would recommend trying out. I have this thing that I wanted to explore. Maybe I'll explain the trick that I was going to tell you about, and then towards the end of the video, we can just figure it out together. So that way I'm not wasting your time. But what we can do is kind of what we had talked about from before. Before I do that, let me grab a gate over this. Actually, it wouldn't really matter. But actually, it would matter. And I'll tell you why in a second. But we can take this. And then we can be like, hey, hey, vocoder, why don't you go to the last Serum 2 thing and go to Serum Pre. And now we've got another vocoding thing that we can kind of step back and do this all over again too. I don't know if this is going to sound cool. Hopefully it will, but we can find out together. So you can see that, you know, we got some wildly different stuff, and not every apple is red. But I thought that was pretty interesting and could be something that could be useful down the line. The other thing that we could potentially do that I wanted to figure out together was I wanted to go into an effect grid. And I'm just going to throw this out there because audio in, yeah. And can I tell this where to go? Or audio sidechain, audio receive. I think that there is a device here. I'm not I don't remember what it is, but I think that there's a device here that you can set this up as an external and route this into an FM source just by setting up a filter. So I'll kind of show you what the anatomy of that looks like. So this is to itself, right? But I mean, you could do something as simple as taking a wavetable if you wanted to, or whatever. You would have probably, I don't even know if that would trigger if we did that. But if you had something in here kind of like this, then you can kind of push this through and get some really interesting things. That's not quite in the level of vocoder, but keeping all of this stuff in mind and then being able to put this inside of a modulator or something of the sort can kind of do some really cool things for you. So there's a lot more to be explored, and I'll probably be trying to figure some of this stuff out as you see that I'm on stream every other day, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Saturday. But hopefully this is something to give you enough to play with. And yeah, I apologize if it's not like, yo, here's how to make this sound, but it's more of like, look at the processing chain and look at the approach to, what was I trying to solve here? Getting organic sounds that come off as more human-like without having to sit down and actually like synthesize it or something of the sort. So thanks everybody. Let me know what you think. And if you have any suggestions or ideas of your own, leave them in the comments, and I'll see you in the next one.